Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give it a minute. I see people are joining and just want to give it one more minute before we actually start. Um, let's give it one more minute and then I'll get started. And I know Lindsay, my coworker, is here helping me with the slide deck. So just wanted to say welcome for those of you that are here. I'll just introduce myself real quickly. I'm Irma Manziano. I am the Global Payroll Director at Humanic Global Solutions. And, I just am grateful that you're here with us just to spend some time talking about the payroll compliance and the new mobile workforce. We call it new. We know it's not so new today. We know that mobile workforce has been in existence for years, as far as I know, but with the COVID pandemic, we know it's become an actual necessity for a lot of organizations, especially with offices and keeping our distance away and all the regulations that we had. So we know that with the COVID pandemic, it's really created a workforce that has changed dramatically, especially since I started working years and years ago. Just the flexibility and the remote opportunities have increased dramatically. So it is a few minutes after 1. I think we'll just get started. So again, welcome. And we're here to just share some information, just a few things. Just want to let you know. We would like to, here's our agenda. We're going to just talk a little bit about remote worker types, different types of remote workers that we're seeing. Talk a little bit about the payroll compliances, challenges, and risks involved with those remote workers. A little strategic planning on things that maybe you might want to consider as an organization to deal with the remote workers. And we wanted to leave some time for some live Q&A. So we would prefer that you can ask questions throughout if you wish. There's a little chat option, or you could wait till the end where we saved at least 10 minutes or so to ask questions. And another thing is I want to be interactive, so I just don't want to talk at you for 45, 50 minutes. We do have some polling questions, and when those polling questions come up, there'll be an option for you to actually answer the questions, because I like to just get a little feedback on who's with us and what your thoughts and concerns might be. Which kind of leads us, I thought we'd start with a polling question. With your organization, do you actually have remote workers? Maybe you're a remote worker yourself. Does your organization allow remote work? I'm just curious to see how it is. And so let's see, if you can answer the poll and see what we get back. I know most organizations do. And I know it also depends on the type of work that your organization might do. I know in retail, my kids are all in retail. They work throughout the entire pandemic, but most offices and organizations, tended to have some ability to be remote. So we'll keep that open for a few more seconds, and let's see what we got. Lindsay, let's see. What are our results? 100%. Okay, so no surprise there. Not surprised that most organizations have that remote option. So we kind of broke down these remote worker options into a few categories. And what we're noticing also out there, we just kind of pulled some statistics. Remote is not having a remote possibility is not an option. We found that the vast majority of job seekers, they won't even consider a role. I think about, I'm going to say younger workers today, if you don't have that remote option, they won't even consider that job. And 74% of workers actually say that they would leave their organization if they didn't allow the remote option. So I thought that was very interesting statistics. And obviously due to the pandemic, you can see this rise in that 216% rise in remote workers, especially due to COVID from 2005 to 2019. And I'm sure it increases even today in 2022. So just wanted to share a little bit about that, but it's good to see that all your organizations offer that. So what type of remote workers do we have? I know it's kind of a broad term, but we think about different people. So you have those folks that are just working from home 100%. So you might have that ability. Your office might have even just shut down. A lot of companies, decided to downsize their actual brick and mortar options. So you might work from home 100%. What we're seeing, the second option is a hybrid model. So your organization might allow people to work partially from home, partially in the office. I'm seeing a lot of companies today, now that things have lightened a little bit with in some states with pandemic and the ability to actually be out and reduce mask wear, that hybrid model is kind of we're seeing that on the uptick. So offices might be open 1 day a week, 2 days a week, but they want people to have some type of collaboration in person. And so that hybrid model seems to be pretty popular and on the rise. Then you're going to have what I call that business traveler mobile employee. So salespeople, different jobs that you might be doing that you actually were always traveling before. And so you're still traveling from state to state, location to location, international travel if you need to. So you have that mobile worker that, yes, you might be in an office every so often, but your job requires a lot of travel from location to location. And then the other thing that we've seen on the rise, which I thought was very interesting, is this digital nomad concept, where some individuals, they don't have any place of work. They're not staying their home. They're literally traveling around from place to place, country to country. They're actually out there traveling, and really all they need is their laptop. Look at us today, right? We're doing everything online. You're watching me on a video, and that's all I need. I need an internet. I need accessibility to my laptop or some type of device, and I can get my work done. And these individuals really have no home location. And what we saw, that this is just a little thing we wanted to share here, is that in Italy, and so I'm Italian, so this kind of, I was like, oh, this would be great. Been there several times, but in Venice, they actually have this program to attract remote workers. So it's like, it's called Venywhere. Work from anywhere. Hey, great. Love to, let me go to Venice, let me go to Italy, let me work there, bring my laptop, and all is good, all is good. You can have your dream work experience. So I just thought that was interesting that this is actually a promotion. So some countries are saying, hey, come here or come work here, why not? Now, there's something in it for them, right? Because they might collect taxes and withholdings. But I just thought that was really interesting that this idea of a remote worker is so vast. It's not just working from home. It could be working from anywhere, which is a little bit different and can create a lot of considerations as an employer as to what do you do now with this population. So there's many different things to consider, and I want another question just to kind of see what are you most concerned about with managing your remote teams? We obviously have payroll compliance issues. Is it employee satisfaction? Are you concerned about your employees and your retention? Are there tax considerations that you're concerned about from a corporate perspective? Or maybe there's something else that we haven't considered here that, please enter in the chat and if there's a different option there. So we will let you answer that question to see, really what are you concerned about? And, how do you deal with managing your remote teams? So, Lindsay, if we want to see what we have, let's see. All right. So, okay. So we have, so half of you have tax considerations and risks, which is not surprising. We have payroll compliance. I don't know if we have some payroll folks on for that, and then employee satisfaction. So no other. So hopefully those three categories captured most of what we have. And we'll talk a little bit about each of them and what we're seeing. So there are many pain points and I believe risks when you're now dealing with this new workforce out there. And, you're talking about payroll compliance. How do I report these people? How do I track them? Tax considerations, as well as that employee experience. And what does that mean as an employee and as an employer? What do I have to offer? So we'll kind of go through each one a little bit and just kind of point out some things that we thought about. So from a payroll compliance, when I think about this, who's responsible for this? Is it just payroll or are there other areas in your organization that need to deal with this? I was thinking about this with this remote worker increase. who's actually responsible? Is it an HR issue? Is it comp and ben? Maybe you have a global mobility team. So where does it lie? Like, whose responsibility is it to ensure there's accurate payroll reporting? I could be a payroll processor, I could just report, you tell me where to report to, but at the end of the day, if I have to do multi-state reporting, which could be a requirement depending on the states that that person is working in, who is responsible for getting that information? How do we report multi-state or dual state reporting? I know I used to travel quite a bit, and I would get my W-2s from 3-4 different states within the US. It was my responsibility now to report and do those tax returns. So, but how was that captured by my organization? We had methods of tracking my location. So those employee location tracking capability, is it in your payroll tool? Do you have an external tool to track those individuals? Because it's important to develop some kind of framework to ensure that you're tracking your individual's location. Now, I know sometimes it's hard to have your employee comply. I've had issues there where you find out things after the fact, and now you have to do amendments per se to your reporting, so that becomes an issue. So multi-state reporting is a huge thing from a domestic front to think about, to ensure. Now, if you're having these remote workers, they're traveling from place to place, how do I ensure what state requirements are there? Are there reciprocity agreements? So some states have agreements amongst themselves where you don't have to report in both states, you can report in the one, and then they have these agreements, but that's not with every state. Some states have a de minimis. So if you're in the state for so many days, after that de minimis, you now are, you start a taxable event. So between every different state has different rules. During that COVID time, we found that a lot of employers just kept reporting the employer location, right? It was okay. We didn't find organizations go back and change their locations based on their home and where they were, and that was kind of accepted. But now that this is the new norm, and here it is, I can't believe it's 2 years later since this all started, the states are getting smart. They're saying, nope, we want you to pay taxes in the state you're working in. Doesn't matter where your organization is located, but you know what? You're working in New Jersey. I'm in New Jersey. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey, but let's say my organization's in New York. I need to pay my New Jersey taxes as well. So it's just an interesting fact that has to be considered from state to state. Now, if we take it from a global perspective and international, what happens if I want to work in another country for a while? So nothing ties me to New Jersey. I have family in Italy. I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to go work there. Is my organization going to be okay with that? What does that mean? Every country has different requirements. I've been doing global payroll for years, and there's some countries that day one, you're working in that country day one, they want their taxes. You think about the US, we tax on worldwide income. So it doesn't matter where I go, I'm still paying US taxes, regardless of where I'm working in other countries. So there's a lot of international requirements that have to be considered when you have individuals going from location to location. And that creates a big tax filing, tax payment issue when you're thinking about where your tax being taxed, where, what are the requirements? Some states you pay and file per payroll. Some states you pay and file like monthly. Some states are quarterly. Then you have the unemployment, right? Is it quarterly? What do? You're withholding, but when do you file and report? So there's a lot of things to consider from a payroll perspective. Now, going into tax. Now, I know there's payroll withholding taxes, and we have those jurisdictions where if you're not reporting properly, and let's say now we're amending or we're reporting late, penalties and interest can be severe, especially from the federal government. From a US perspective, it's amazing, right? All the penalties and interest they charge you if you fail to make a payment timely. Now, some states, even if you have to zero file or do some type of filing, you get penalties if you missed a filing. So knowing your tax jurisdictions and the penalties and interests, it can be severe. And that also can open you up to audits. I've had clients that have had payroll audits, and it could be very costly because typically clients will tend to reach out for assistance. They might need a tax advisor's assistance as well as their payroll provider. And now it's a huge cost when you go through an audit to go back and support why you reported, maybe why you didn't report, because you kind of put that red flag out there when you're trying to make all these amendments for, like, let's say your 941s in certain states and all that. So that causes a big red flag. From a international perspective, there's tax considerations for tax treaties. You might have an employee say, well, I want to go to this country, what does that mean for me? And there's a little difference if you're going to send an expat. You might have expat policies, and you're dealing with your foreign income tax credits and your different tax treaties. That could be another whole webinar just on global payroll considerations and tax treaties. But is there what do you have to do for Social Security? Is there a totalization agreement with that country? Do I have to withhold for that as well? So based on your tax treaties and your tax reporting, there's a lot to consider there from an international perspective as well. And then another thing that tends to be missed, and a lot of companies don't realize, is that if your employee is working, let's say, in another state or another country, there's this whole permanent establishment concept, which again is if that individual, based on what they're doing for you, let's say they're making decisions and they're closing deals or they're signing legal documents for you in that jurisdiction, you might be actually establishing a permanent establishment where they're saying that's a fixed place of business, and now you have corporate tax issues. And that is completely different, right, than you're worrying about payroll considerations, but now you're actually creating this legal entity by having this person working in that jurisdiction, and that you might not have even considered. So the PE risk is a big one that we're seeing that might not even be consideration, because what's the big deal if I'm working in another location? I'm just doing my job. But what you're doing can be seen as, I have this ability to make decisions and I'm signing contracts, and now I actually have a tax, like a corporate tax liability in that jurisdiction. It's a little complicated, but I definitely wanted to throw that out there because some people just think, well, what's the big deal? And put you on payroll, I'll do your withholding tax, but it could be much bigger than that when it comes to PE issues, as well as, especially from an international perspective, what's your requirement to report in that country. So those are kind of your tax considerations, tax ideas that you have there as well. So with that, the other thing, we think about, reporting, you have your payroll, you have taxes, your considerations with audit, but what we're finding is that clients are now concerned about the employee experience. So it's critical to consider, how do I retain that talent, right? There's a war on talent. I see tons of jobs out there. People are bouncing around from place to place. So how do I reduce that turnover? What do I do to retain that talent? And, this whole remote concept has created such diversity in the workplace. You now see, as an employee, so even personally for myself, I live in New Jersey. I used to commute into New York. I used to spend 3 to 4 hours a day, commuting. Well, I don't need to do that anymore. So if I can take a job anywhere, really. What if there was a job, great opportunity on the West Coast, and they're willing to allow me to work from home? Well, I could do that now. So it really broadens my options. I don't have to worry about maybe living in the city or living in a high cost area. I could move. I can be anywhere now if that employer offers that. Now, from an employer's perspective, if you think about it, now my talent pool has just increased. Maybe before I was looking for somebody within, that was willing to commute into my office. Now we can hire individuals out of state, even from another country if we wanted to say, hey, where's that talent? What do I need to best fit the roles that I have? So we are finding that there's so much more diversity in the workforce now and all these opportunities, but that diversity obviously then creates all those reporting requirements and tax considerations that we just talked about. So, how do you manage your talent? From those statistics before, you see people want that flexibility. It's improved your work-life balance. I know, even personally for me, right, not having to do a 4-hour commute, 3 to 4 hour commute every day, that has been wonderful. And I can go to the gym in the morning, I can be home and have dinner with my family. It has really changed me personally, my lifestyle. And if I knew that I had to go back to that and be out of the house for 15 hours a day, I'm not sure if I would want to do that. So, it's really nice to have, you can see, from my background, I'm home. I work from home. I do the hybrid model. I go to the office, I work from home, and it works. And it works for me. It works for my position. But, I think about if that was to change, or if I was forced to be back in the office every day, I might consider another job. So that I think that has been a big difference. And then we talk about remote team integration, right? What's your work culture? What are you developing for your individuals for work? How do you keep your teams integrated together to collaborate? If you're 100% remote, I will admit I miss my team. I miss seeing them. You have the little water cooler chats. You have a little more personal interaction, let's say, when you're in person. It doesn't mean it goes away, because now I'm always on camera talking to my team, which is very different than actually being in person. So it's more deliberate now. So what do you do to keep that work culture? What are you going to do as an employer? How do you do things? I know we've done virtual happy hours. We've done things, online Christmas parties during when COVID was crazy. So what are you doing as an employer? How do you keep your employees, integrated and collaborating? And another thing that you might not think about, for those that might be on that deal with more of a global workforce, you probably have expat policies or policies in place for your expatriates or impats. The difference here is what we're seeing now is, does your company have a remote worker policy? Could be something completely different. I would personally suggest that you have one, especially since everybody says you have remote workers, because I think it'd be very clear for your employees to understand what is that internal structure. What are you allowing as an employer? Can I just pick up and go anywhere? That can create a lot of chaos. Do you have an approval process that says, okay, here's where my work location is going to be? I requested, it gets approved, let's say from my management team, and then I can, work in that location. So if you don't have a policy in place, definitely, reach out and whether we could assist with one, or, or whoever you're working with, to actually put one into place, because I think it's really important that there's clear defined lines as to what your policy is going to be. Because not only will it improve your employee experience, it will also help with your payroll compliance and your tax considerations, because you will know where your people are if you have that framework and structure in place to track your employees and ensure that from an employer perspective, what does it mean for your employee to be working in a different location based on all the things we talked about. So that is considering the employee consideration. And we thought maybe I'd just give you a few examples of things that I have seen over the years relating to, there's remote workers. I'm just going to pause a little bit because I think I said a lot in the last, 25 minutes or so. I don't know if there's any questions out there, or because I can't see it pop up, but if there's anything, Lindsay, that came up while I was talking. If not, I'll just kind of go through a few examples and then we'll take some questions. I will take the pause as nothing yet. So, all right. So from a US perspective. What we're seeing, and especially just we wrapped up year ends and doing all our reporting, what we found is that we had one client in particular that had a ton of after the fact emails to us once their employees got their W-2s that were like, hold on, wait a minute, where's my W-2 for my location that I worked in? You know what, I was working in this location this entire time. Why am I being taxed in this state and not that state? So what does that create? A lot of W-2Cs. And for my payroll people out there, you know, that is not fun, right? First of all, your employee might be annoyed that they have to wait for a W-2C, which then of course, you know, maybe their tax advisor or they did their taxes wrong. Or now they're getting duplicate W-2s, right? So like, why do I have to now, you know, report my taxes in more than one state? You know, well, I thought I only had to be taxed in one state, not the other. So what we found with this client is that after year end, we are now amending. Not only do you have to do a W-2C, but now we're amending the entire year. We're doing all new 941s. We have to report and refile their state returns. And not only is it unhappy employees, but obviously, you know, as an employer, you don't want to start doing amendments. Not only is it, again, that red flag and really can create an audit and put you on somebody's radar, but now it's costly. It's the time, it's, you know, the cost of having to rerun those payrolls, rerun all those tax filings, especially if you're using an outsourced payroll company or, you know, with your tax advisor now trying to really understand what are the rules, what should I have done? Because an employee might give you pushback. I've had one case where the employee said, nope, I'm not paying tax in that state, just not doing it. We're just like, but you need to. And now what do? Do you overlook it as an employer to say, well, would anybody really know they were in that state? Let's just turn a blind eye. I've seen that happen. I've seen clients decide that we're just not going to report there and maybe nobody will know and we'll take our chances. I think that worked a year ago, not going to work going forward. I think states are getting smarter and there will be repercussions, I do believe, if you're not compliant. As a professional, I will always tell people, be compliant, 100% compliance. I know that's not realistic and that tends to not be the norm. You know, sometimes we'll overlook certain things, but if you want to be truly compliant at 100%, you're going to start refiling all those 941s, you're going to do all those W-2Cs, you're going to do all your state amendments, and that is a huge expense, or could be, to the organization. And then you have penalties and interest, because if you didn't file for let's just say the entire year, so what's that state going to do? You know, you're going to get those notifications in a few months that say, oh, you now owe penalties and interest. And it just becomes something that could just take months and months to recover from. So point being there is really have a way to know your employees, know their location, whether that falls under an HR responsibility, your global mobility department, HR, I'm not sure where it falls within your organization, but if you have a policy and you have a way to track and have a payroll solution or something kind of technology that allows you to track your location, that will help in the end. So that is some US domestic challenges that we've seen, and that's recent. Those are things we've been dealing with over the last month or two, helping our clients properly report, because their employees are now coming out of the woodwork saying, hold on, this is where I have been, or this is where I was, and then you're trying to, you know, manipulate all your data, your payroll data, and get that right. So now, from an international perspective, what do we do there? So your employee travels to another country, and I had a situation where the employee is like, well, you know, I refuse to acknowledge I was in this country, and they did not want to be reported. They said, you know, well, why should I be? But they were there the majority of the year. So what do you do for some employees that you didn't even know they were there? I mean, I had one employee, they went to India once, and she was working from there, and I said, you cannot do that. You can't just bring your laptop and work there. I didn't even know she was gone. She had family there, she went there, but it wasn't just like a vacation. but she started working and she was there for weeks. I said, you cannot work. We had to shut her down. I said, because you are not able to do that appropriately, and also because she was in management. I said, we can't do that. You can also, have situations where, there's different data security requirements in the EU. In Europe, you might not be able to transmit information, and now you're posing that risk of data security. So there's a lot of considerations when you have an international individual that just kind of travels and works from another location, and you're not aware. Now, if this individual, I would highly recommend, let's just say you have someone that says, you know what, I'm going to spend, 6 months a year, or I'm going to go back and forth and travel back and forth to another location, like outside of the US. You might then pull in your global mobility, your tax advisors to say, where and when do I have to report, right? There's short-term rules for, there could be short-term and long-term rules. So typically under maybe 183 days, for some countries, not all, you might not have a reporting requirement on certain items, but once they're over that 183-day threshold, now it's a taxable event. Not saying that's with every country, but there are certain countries that require it. Some countries you can just go in and maybe just register a payroll. You don't have to have an organization like an entity registered as a corporation, but you might just put them on payroll. I know in the UK, you could set up just a payroll, report that person. But now what do? I'm an employee. I don't want to be taxed in the UK and taxed in the US. What do I do with all my taxes? How do I deal with that? Do I get it back when I do my tax returns after the fact? Or, now I'm being double taxed. Is there a tax treaty? I don't want to pay Social Security in both countries. So there's a lot of different things to consider that could be challenges, especially when you're dealing with international. That, kind of opens up a whole new world out there. And, doing global payroll for all these years, I've seen lots of challenges, lots of things, but I definitely wanted to put it on your radar that if you're going to allow all this remote work and have people work from anywhere, that is a consideration to look at. So with that being said, what are we currently seeing in the market? Again, I think when I started, we're seeing, things are opening up now. I don't know what states you might all be in, but here on the East Coast, in Metro New York, New Jersey, rules have been relaxed. I have a lot of friends that are going back to the office, mostly hybrid models. I don't know anybody that had to go back 100%, but, we're not seeing employers forcing employees to go back to the office to return, but I now see more gently encouraging, trying to get there maybe once or twice a week. I used to work in an accounting firm, and they are now requiring people to be in the office at a minimum 2 to 3 days a week. And being there to have that presence. Now there's more travel. People are now becoming more mobile and just traveling. So there is definitely, we see that return to the workforce outside of, let's say, your home, but definitely not forcing it. We're also seeing those employee demands for flexible work. I don't think companies are going to be very successful if they say no remote is an option, right? Where you must be in the office 100% of the time. I find that would be probably a challenge to see that. And then, offices not being fully staffed, what we're seeing is some offices are being condensed. Some companies are closing offices. And I guess they're realizing, why have that real estate cost, right? Why incur that cost if people aren't going to be there? And we had another little statistic here, which was a survey, and this is back from last August, but people were currently looking for new jobs. I see a lot of movement. Sure, those of you that are on those professional networks, LinkedIn, this, that, there's a lot of new jobs out there. There's a lot of, and most of them say, remote work options or hybrid options. So I do believe people are just looking for that flexibility. They're looking for those benefits to have that. And so it is something I believe that's here to stay and is going to remain prevalent, in the current economy. So that's what we're seeing. So, we talked a lot about, all this remote work, what do we do? So like, what do we do now? Like, what are some strategies or to really think about and plan for if you haven't already? I'm sure most of you have dealt with this situation one way or another, whether you're in payroll, tax, HR, having to deal with these different things. But what should we do now? Like, what are a few things? And I just kind of wrapped up a few things on here. I think it's really important to have that company culture and have a documented policy. I'll say it again. I think it's really important for employees to understand what is your stance on this. What will be that documented policy to say, hey, here's what we're allowing. I will, from my own personal experience, where I was working prior, a few years back, we had I will say, a management team that believed you weren't working if you weren't in the office, right? So like I said, I had a long commute. I used to go and I used to travel extensively. And, just being on the road and traveling away from my family and commuting 4 hours on average a day, I wanted to be home, every so often, even just once a week. But sometimes the management said, well, you're home, are you really working? And, that culture and that almost like distrusting your employees created some negativity in the office. So what do you want? You want a culture that's going to say, hey, here's a policy. It's clear. And I do believe, even doing an employee satisfaction survey, just with understanding people want flexibility. And that's what my old organization did years ago. We used to have these, surveys to fill out. And all of a sudden it became, oh, now you can, have more flexibility. And, by the time I left the organization, there was a lot more flexibility, but a lot of the old management just felt that, you needed to be here. If you weren't in the office, you weren't working, which we found being forced to all be home during COVID for most of us, that wasn't the case, right? We still got our jobs done, and people are actually realizing that their productivity has increased when they're home and they don't have distractions. Now, I know it's hard. You've got kids, or I don't know if you heard before, my dog started barking. I have them upstairs, but my one son came home a little earlier from work than I expected, so the dog started barking. But so you have these interruptions, but I do believe that everybody realizes that, right? We're all, whether home or, but we've just adapted. And I know when I'm home and I can just focus and not be in the office, I get a ton done because you could be more focused and get work done. So I think that is important for your employees to really understand what your policy is going to be. Then if you have that, I think, what is the approval process, right? So if I ask, my boss to say, hey, if I want to work here, is this approved? If you have it approved beforehand and you have a location, you have that ability to say, okay, we're allowing people to, change locations throughout the year. How do you do that? I want to make sure that as an employer, that my employees come to me and get it approved first. So this way I can go to HR, I can get my payroll provider, I can get it all properly reported. So this way I know, right? Talk to my tax advisor. Do I need to report? Do I not need to report? What do I do? They're going to be here for a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever it may be. What do I do? And you have that approval process in place. So this way there is no questions at year end. I could do all my tax return filing. I could do a quarterly, monthly, whatever that jurisdiction needs, and I know it's accurate. So I think that's important, which leads into the next bullet about capturing the employee work location, right? That's going to be key in all of this, is where are they working? It's not a new concept for organizations that had business travelers and the big global mobility population. You needed to know where your employees were in order to get their taxes right. But now with this remote being the new thing, from a domestic perspective, we're finding that you need to know where they're working up front to get their withholdings accurate. So now your payroll solution, whatever technology you're using, whatever payroll tools you're using, you need to ensure that it addresses the multi-state reporting specifically, right, from a domestic perspective. But if you have international employees that you need to capture, right, you need to ensure that your payroll solution has that international reporting perspective. we know we have, just from our perspective at Humanic, our technology can handle international reporting. Maybe you work with a company that does that. I don't know if you outsource your global payroll, but that international reporting will be key. And you need to ensure that you have your tax advisor working with you for that tax compliance for domestic as well as international. And that whatever you're doing from your payroll solution and your players, if you have between HR, payroll, your tax team, I believe accounting, right? How are you reporting this? You all need to work together and ensure who's responsible, and ensure that you have all of it together to avoid audits, your penalties and interest that can come along with it for misreporting. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot to think about, and it's not new per se, but we definitely thought it was a great topic to share with you, just to talk about things that you might not even been on top of mind. But now that we have a new year, it's the end of the first quarter, these are all things that we can implement to avoid things at the end of 2022 that could create reporting red flags that we don't want, right? We don't want the IRS or any states knocking on our door for non-compliance. And compliance is just key. Anytime you're dealing with payroll, taxes, you want to ensure your compliance. I've done many talks on just international shadow payroll, things of that, and compliance is just always key. So I hope that was helpful, and some good information for you. And kind of my timing is here. We wanted to leave 10-15 minutes at the end for any questions, any Q&A. Again, there's that little chat box. Hopefully you can find it on your screen. And if there's any questions out there, we are more than happy to answer them. I also wanted to just point out that we do have, I know this information will be available to you. I know we're taping this webinar, so that could be sent along to you. The deck can be shared. There's nothing here that's proprietary. This is information that we're just trying to put out there to help just help our clients, help individuals out there keep track of things to ensure that you're compliant and ensure that your employees have the best experience they have working with you, and as an employer that you're thinking about all the things that you need. So with that, Lindsay, I don't know if we have any questions that you want to read out or anything that came in, or I don't know if I could see it myself on the screen. Let me see. Let's see. What do I have here? Okay. It says, if my employee lives in another state and only works about a week each month at headquarters, do we have to report to both states? Okay. So a little bit of a loaded question. So we have headquarters in one state and they're going in a week somewhere else. Okay. So typically you would have to report in both states, right? So you would report where your employee is working. Now, again, if there's a reciprocity agreement between those states, you may only need to report, right, in the one state. But it really depends on your combination of states, and that is definitely where we can give you a list of the reciprocity agreements. They're definitely on the APA website. You could find it. You can look up the state, because most likely there is a reporting requirement there to ensure that you're properly reporting in both states. So I hope that answered that question, with not knowing what the states are, but pretty much most likely you will, especially because they're working in that location. Now, there is that de minimis rule for states. I have an example in New York. I know last year it was 12 days. So, but it says if you're going there 1 week a month, I'm going to assume that there is a reporting requirement. I know, like California, you're there one day. Unless you're there for training, you can get around things. I went to California for training, and I was like, oh no, do I have to do a California return? But because it was training and the type of work I was doing, I didn't need to report. So it could, based on work being performed and the reciprocity agreements, that could change. So, and again, if you have a specific question that you can always ask me later about your actual states, feel free. My information will be at the end of this too, so you can always just reach out and shoot me an email. All right, let's see, I have another question here. Give me a second. Let me see what it says. Do you always need an office in the location to withhold and report in the state? Okay, so I'm assuming this means like a brick and mortar, like a building, like an actual office. And the answer will be no. You don't actually need like an actual physical presence, I'm going to say, like building, in order to report. So, you can set up a jurisdiction for reporting purposes. You can go online to the state website. We do this all the time for our clients. An employee is now, working in their home in this location, and there may not necessarily be an office there, but you need to report, right? Because they're going to be there based on the time that they're there. So you could just set up, you get a tax ID, you register your organization with that state. So it's really just setting up the registrations. And it's not just withholding, you also have to think about unemployment as well, if there's an unemployment typically requirement as well. So you would have to set that up as well to ensure that you're properly reporting. And so you don't necessarily need, an actual office building. Some people would say, now I know we have clients that are in almost every state location, but it's just because their employees are traveling back and forth, or they might be working there. And another thing to think about too that we didn't touch upon is like localities. I know I kept saying about state reporting, but like in Pennsylvania, right? You have all these different local local tax reporting. So, you might be in Pennsylvania, but where's your local? Like, depending on their address or where your employee is working or where their home is, you could not only, you don't just have the Pennsylvania state withholdings, but you also have potential the local withholdings as well. So that can also be fun for my payroll people out there. You know what I mean. So that could be quite challenging. So let's see, are there any other questions out there? Let's see. I don't see anything popping up. I'll give it another, just give it another minute or two, just to see, for those of you that are on with us, just any other questions that might come up or anything you could think of. Again, I'm Irma Manziano. You could see my name there. I'm with Humanic. We are always here and willing to assist you with any questions or concerns you might have related to payroll reporting, tax compliance, domestic as well as international. And, we'd love to hear from you. If you even have any, my information is, like I said, is part of the deck. It's on the next, Lindsay, if you want to just forward the slides to the next slide. That's my email address. Feel free, you can reach out. You can just contact us at our website. There's the phone number there. We'd love to hear from you. We would like to also just, if there's other topics that might be of interest to you, we'd be more than happy to present on them, to do the research, or based on, we have different subject matter experts within our organization that can help, not just payroll process, tax reporting, just compliance issues, both domestically and internationally. So I don't see any more other questions coming up. I know I speak fast, so I apologize for that as I go through, but I have a lot of energy, love this stuff. And, we just thank you again for joining us. And for some of you that this might've been your lunch hour, or maybe it's your early morning, but thanks again for joining us. And we hope to hear from you if you have any questions. So thank you.